Have you considered how to have a powerful birth journey? I met today's guest at one of my doula workshops. I love meeting doulas, some who have had children already, like Theresa, and some who have not. People who want to support a friend or a family member, and those who are ready to change careers to ensure that all birthing people have safe, respectful, joyful births. If you're ready to make a difference in your life and someone else's, see the link in the show notes to find a doula workshop or retreat that works for you. Hi, I'm Debra Pascali-Bonaro, Director of Orgasmic Birth and host of the Orgasmic Birth podcast. I know you're really going to enjoy hearing Theresa's birthing stories and how she's birthing forward her wisdom to support others. Theresa Lasbrey Peters is a birth and postpartum doula, a lactation specialist, and founder of Nnenna Birth. And I'm going to have to ask you, Theresa, did I say that correct?
Nnenna.
Nnenna. Okay,
I mean,
sorry.
There are various ways to butcher it. I'm sort of butchering it myself, but it's like, it's my mother's native tongue. So it's like, you said it'd be like Nnenna Birth, but I call it, I anglicize it a little with the Nnenna Birth. So
Nnenna Birth. And does it have a particular meaning?
Yeah, so Nne means your mother, Nna means your father. So I put Nna together to mother, father, and then also somewhere in between there, because I don't quite have my logo yet, somewhere in between there, it's going to encompass all types of ways in which people birth. So there's room for moms, dads, and everything on the spectrum of birthing. So yeah.
That's beautiful. And I'm going to just keep going because one of the things that I love in the way that you're putting all your wisdom together is you say your mission is to revolutionize the ways we give birth in this country. And having talked with you recently about some of your experiences, I can honestly say you are revolutionizing the way people give birth. So welcome, Theresa.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, it is truly an honor because I know that you talked about when you were getting ready for your first birth, right? It actually put you on a whole discovery, right, of knowledge to have an empowered birth. Can you explain a little bit about what that was like when you were pregnant and what your feelings were and how you prepared?
Well, so, the prospect of your first pregnancy and your first experience of delivery for most of us isn't something that we necessarily look forward to. So there was the fear of the unknown. And so one of the things that I do when I'm afraid is I learn as much as possible about the thing. And then I strategize my way through to optimize the experience. And, my starting point was this email that a friend sent me. Like, she had birthed a couple of times, she'd had a doula, and she just sent me like all these resources, links, a visual birth plan, which I'm enamored of. And in picking out each birth choice, like in choosing each choice for my visual birth plan, I learned about everything. I learned why I wanted intermittent monitoring versus continuous monitoring. So I just learned about the different things. I researched, ways in which I could optimize the birth process by, eating certain things beforehand, like having my 6 dates a day, the red leaf raspberry tea, just really looking for the most natural and most supportive way possible to give birth to our child. My husband deferred to me, right? He didn't, whenever I ask him about these things, he's just like, you knew what you were doing, you researched, and you have to remember that nobody researches like you. I was like, but why? Why don't they? And he said that, and he had never had a moment of worry, which is like a gift and a curse, because, there's no like, oh, you did so much, you're so amazing. He's like, he was like, I knew you were gonna handle it, and I knew it, I trusted it, and so I wasn't worried at all. I had no concerns. So for me, it was something where I presented fear with just gathering information and really looking at the evidence. science, right? So, like looking at evidence-based sources, looking at natural birthing based, just uh, approaches to giving birth, and just found, like looking at what minimizes tearing, like just, learning that, there's the perineal massage, but there's also, which may or may not work with your second baby, but, and then I just learned even recently that, the more you do it, the less likely it is to work, which is kind of interesting. So the more diligent you are, so, there's some a happy place with it, but just doing like, learning that you're giving birth on your side or on all fours would be the thing that would minimize the tearing, and not the squatting that all of us natural leaning people would love to do, right? Like we always move towards like, oh yeah, I want to do that, like I want to squat, but like squatting is so fast and so precipitous that it often tears you, like you use gravity, but it tears you. So like all the research, all the gathering, all the things those are the things that like I patted around myself and I found comfort in, I mean, even in the, like being, when I first learned I was pregnant, just like learning about every test and what it meant. And, so that is what comforted me. Because I had some moments in the pregnancy where it was very early on and we were doing, genetic testing and, like did the chorionic villus sampling, and it was inconclusive. And like so you learn early, and I'm an older mom. I had my first right after I turned 40, and I had my second right after I turned 43. And literally I got married at 39, got pregnant a few months later without any assistance, like literally a month later. And then we were older, so there was a concern that there might be something going on. And so when it was inconclusive, that was like the beginning of my research, like like what could go on. And everything turned out fine. I ended up having an amniocentesis and everything was great, and the kids are like the oldest, he's great. But how I comforted myself in this waiting time was just researching. Like, so I don't just read websites like, like, oh, let me read this article about this study. I read the study, right? I remember my, like lab reports in high school. So I read the conclusion, I read the discussion and the methods, and, just really look to see what the source of the study is too, like who did it and what, what their bias might be, like why they would put out that particular study. And I try to really look at it from an end, like, what if this is not true? What if this is true? And what harm would this do if it weren't true, but I tried it anyway?
Great
Like,
questions.
so yeah, so that's how I have, gone on this journey. So
So
when
can
it
I
came
ask
to
you
Hmm?
this? Because like I love the visual birth plans too, right? The preferences. And you did all this research, like amazing, right? Especially for a first time, birth, you did a lot of homework. How did your caregiver respond? How did you kind of bridge that and present that information of your wishes and their practice?
So my caregiver, great OB, like I have a thing where I like my OB to be someone who's given birth before. And I know you don't want like the person doing your heart surgery to, like, to have a heart attack, but there's something to be said about sometimes, like maybe it's magical thinking. But so my OB was very interesting. Like she was very, had her checklists, very intelligent and thoughtful, but very much like, like checked the urine for protein every time, like, did the blood pressure every time. Now later on, I'm like, maybe I shouldn't have done that, but like did her own like sort of light ultrasound every time because she had the kind of machine to do the sonogram. And so she was like very diligent. So I remember telling her, oh, and I forgot to mention the other thing that was part of my birth journey well before I ever had a child is I knew someone who had 3 children, and she told me about her 3 different birth experiences and how she did, like hypnosis. So she did like hypnobirthing, and how the second and the third babies were like huge. They were over 10 pounds, and she had a wonderful experience. And I was like, I'm going to do something like that. So then I didn't do hypnobirthing, did hypnobabies because it was like more radical and up my alley, right? Um, so I presented this to my OB, like, this is what I'd like. You know, I want a hip lock. I do not want an IV. IVs artificially inflate the size of the baby, right? And she was like, what? And then I was like, and I don't want a Pitocin injection. I am going to breastfeed. After I give birth, no traction on the placenta, right? Like after I give birth, I want to put the baby right to the nipple, and that will help my uterus contract. You know, I said that I would be doing hypno babies, you know, I would be doing this whole hypnosis thing. And she was like, you know, she was respectful, but she was like, they all, I mean, pretty much in a nutshell, she was like, they all say that's what they're gonna do. They all say, I remember when I was speaking to you the other day and I was like, just talking about the whole like medical world, like, you know, like, it's like almost like, it's almost like a prison, like they all break eventually, like, you know, they all come in with these like plans and then they just don't, it just never works out their own way, right? So you know, like, so she came to me with, she responded to me with the knowledge that she had, which is people have these birth plans that don't quite go the way that they want, right? And people are, you know, you're told time and again, don't expect it to go the way that you want. Well, mine went the way that I wanted, right? Mine went very much the way that I wanted. But I knew the things like, you know, labored home, right? As long as possible. So just, you know, like we had these conversations. She told me about the things that worked for her and what didn't work for her. I wanted a limit of cervical exams until I was ready to push. And then after a certain amount of weeks, I was like, no more cervicals in the office. It doesn't tell you anything, right? So it was, I mean, it was kind of weird that I was so steadfast about stuff, having never done it. And here's this OB that's probably done like thousands of births, right? And, you know, like their expertise versus my my approach to it. But I also know that, you know what, no one is expert on my body, right? And then I have this power over my own body, and I have this will. I have this will that has things go not simply go the way that I want them to go, but there's just ability to I would say adjust and, you know, strategize, like, okay, so like we have this roadblock, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and, you know, we're going to adjust continuously. So, you know, like I have things in my plan like dim lights and no music and no students, because you know what, I don't really love you students, but no thank you. You know, like free movement. You know, like I knew that I had to move to get this baby out. No IV because I was going to eat whatever I wanted until I didn't want to eat, because I knew that my body would be like, no more food. And, you know, and it certainly did. So just like when I spoke to her, there was pushback about the Pitocin. There was a great deal of concern about the Pitocin, but I think also they come from a place of, you know, like a lot of augmentation in birth. You know, a lot of there's the IV fluid, and there's all these other things that make Pitocin necessary. You know, like because it's like you're peeling off a scab sometimes, like, you know, like, or there are inductions and all these other things. You know, so it's that is her realm, you know, like when you're a hammer, everything's a nail. And I think that, you know, like when you're an OB, everything's a potential surgery because they're great surgeons, right? And I felt like she was lovely. I love her, right? Like I love her because she's intelligent and she respects my intelligence and she never infantilized me. And she had her own body of knowledge, right? So, and I'm sure she's never seen anybody like me again, you know, because I'm special, weird, intense, you know, whatever you want to say.
You're amazing.
I'm all the things.
I love that, like, you even use the words like, this was your power, right? And your body, and you knew your body and your baby better than anyone. And I think that's such an important lesson. I think, as you know, too many people default to give the power to the medical establishment or provider, and you really stood in your power. So tell us more about the actual, like, how did it feel, your labor and birth? Like, you had all this knowledge. How did it go?
So I knew exactly when we conceived. So I counted 40 weeks after, right? I asked my mother when she gave birth. I don't think she even remembered because, like her youngest was like, I don't know, 30, right? Like it was a million years ago. So, and then so 40 weeks after it was going to be Mother's Day. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to have this baby on Mother's Day. And my app said that Mother's Day. My OB said the next day. And then my baby decided to come the next day after that. So I missed Mother's Day. So this is how it went. So the morning of the due date that the OB had given me, so did you feel something like a little, something just felt different, maybe it's the quickening or something felt different. Like the cramps or whatever didn't feel like, they felt like they were something, right? And I have a different relationship to my body. Like, people be like, oh, you're super, super strong. I'm not strong. They're like, I always say to people, like, there are pregnancy poops that made me cry. And my husband will tell you,
I like that.
the worst. They were the worst. And my husband will tell you, like, I'm the most miserable sick person and I'm the most miserable pregnancy person. So I always tell people, like, I would give pregnancy 1 star. Do not recommend. I love to give birth. I love to give birth. I would give birth like an Olympic sport. I would do it all the time. I'm different. So I always say that I'm weird. I would do it because I would like adjust and strategize, right? Like, so for me, it's a sport. Like, okay, this time, like be more physically fit in the 3rd trimester so that you could, or preserve your energy so you can flip, like all this other stuff. Like I would keep doing it. So the quickening that morning, something was off. And then, like I went to the bathroom and I think I had like my mucus plug had come out or a bloody show. And I remember, tapping my husband that morning and saying, I think something's going on, but you can go to work. And he was like, what are you talking about? Like, what is wrong with you? I was like, I'm fine, it's going to take a while, so you can go. And he was like, nope. So he's with me all day. And so I guess I'm going through this part of, with hypno babies, we language. So it's not labor, it's your birthing time. It's not contractions, it's pressure waves. Right. And so they're just trying to take away the charge and the edge of it. But you know what? You can, you can take the charge, you can possess any word and take the charge out of everything. Just for conventional speaking, I'm gonna just refer to as labor and contractions. But in my world, it's my birthing time and my pressure waves. So I remember like every time I had a contraction, like I don't experience them as painful. I've experienced them as pressure, or like there's something in my brain like, oh, look, your pelvis is opening up, bringing you closer to your baby. So it was like this whole like thing. So I don't even know if I did hypno babies correctly, right? Like it was kind of floundering with my 6-week training. I was playing the tracks. So maybe it was like a little hypno babies or just me being like, just intensely focused. But I felt like my body was opening up. It's opening up. It's opening up. Then the next thing that happened was I had asked my hair braider to come to the house that day. And so she braided my hair while I was in labor, right? And she, yeah, it was something, yeah, and that was like my tradition, getting my hair braided while I'm in labor. So she, who had 6 children, she was like, you're in labor? She's got 6 children. She's like, you're in labor? And I was like, yeah. I was like, she's like, that's the calmest labor I've ever seen. And I was just like, yeah, just pressure. I just, like, and my labor was like a lot of going to the bathroom, a lot of like, I would get in the shower because I just love the warmth of the water, like I napped, I ate, I listened to the tracks. It was very, very relaxed, like very, very chill. And again, everything I felt was me getting closer to my baby, right? So I do have an interesting relationship with my body where I've spoken to some of my friends who are holistic practitioners, like holistic OBs and holistic MDs, more holistic MDs. And they were like, you have to acknowledge that your relationship is a little different because I know which ovary I'm ovulating from every month, right? Like I know if it's left or if it's right, I can feel it, I know it. So, like being like, they were like, you're a little more in tune than you acknowledge, or than other people. Not everyone is that in tune. So just like, or attuned to their bodies. So I was just relaxing. Everything was good. I was eating, had a little coconut water. Everything was great. Everything was great. And this is from like 6 in the morning. Everything's great. Everything's great. Everything's great. And then up until about 10 or 11, I've called my OB. I'm having heartburn, but that's like, that's been the run of the mill. I call my doula. I still can talk. The doula's like, yeah, you're fine, right? Like, because like you're fine. Like, we're not rushing to do anything because you have a ways to go. This is your first. So there's, this, I guess the first is like, that just the wedge. Because after that, they're usually like, they're like, it can go really fast. But the first is like, it supposedly goes really slow. Oh, that's what they say, or so they say. So about 11 at night, I take a shower, and I go and like created a little pallet by the bathroom door, like some cushion. And I just didn't feel as comfortable. So then I go into the room to just kind of lie down and just be comfortable. My husband is there. He's playing the tracks from the Hypno Babies. I'm listening to them. And my husband, who's been with me all day, just relaxing. And for you at this Orgasmic Birth podcast, he's been farting all day, okay? He's been farting all day. He's been chilling. He's been farting. And it's been fine. And I was like, get out of here. Stop farting and turn that ish off. And I was like, and so I'll go back in the shower again. And again, I'm like using the bathroom and then showering, and using the bathroom and then showering. And I had the urge to push, like this intense urge to push. So at that point, I was like, I called it. I was like, it's time for us to go. So this is around 11, right? So we're getting out of the house. I'm wearing a dress that really could be a shirt. I'm just trying to get out of there. I fall into the car, into the back seat, like sort of like the Wicked Witch of the West, where like, her feet are hanging out. My husband is grabbing stuff, and he comes to the car. He's like, it looks like I'm trying to kidnap you. Like, what's going on? So I go into the car, and we're at the top of the Bronx, and we have to go to the Lenox Hill. Like, we're almost in Westchester. So I'm like, he's going, and I'm like, I have this urge to push. Like, I want this baby out. And he's driving, and I'm like, he hits the highway, and there's like a huge accident. Like, it's a whole delay. So he goes locally, and I'm like, just take the lights. Like, take the lights. Like, endanger our lives, take the lights. So he goes, stops in Manhattan, stops on Lexington, because Lenox Hill is on Lexington, and picks up our doula. Oh, but before he picks up the doula, I'm on the phone with her, and I'm like, "Wah!" And she's like, why are you yelling? And I was like, I don't know why either, And then I was like, yeah, I'm fine, but it was like a overwhelming of emotion. So we pick her up, get to the hospital. He goes to park the car. Doula helps me walk to the front desk, right? I'm walking. I feel like a little bit of a zombie. I don't know if I have enough lotion on my body because I've showered 30 times. And the security guard is like, does she want a wheelchair? My doula says she's not sick. She doesn't need a doula. She doesn't need a wheelchair. And so up we go to triage, right? So I go to the front desk, and I'm like, I have the urge to push. And they were like, first time mom? And I said, yes. And they went back to smoking their cigarettes, like, you're going to be here forever, like for 3 days, like, and like, you're too calm. So then we go to triage, and they check me. And they were like, oh my God, she's 9 centimeters. And they just start running into walls. Larry, Moe, and Curly, you remember, running into walls. Like, they can't get the bed through the door because they didn't put the bar down. They're just losing their minds. So we go into the next room. And I remember my husband was driving. I was like, turn off the radio. Like, I was like, they was very specific. So we get into the room, and I was like, turn off that TV. And there are too many people in here. Like, and they were like, something we got to do. Because, for them, it's precipitous. For me, it's been all day. And, they're just things that they want to do. They have their checklist. They want to do all this stuff. So I'm in there. and they're trying to get the baby's heart rate, and they're trying to do whatever they have to do and do the little like intervaginal, the probe or whatever. I'm like, is the baby okay? So at some point I'm on all fours. This is happening in minutes because I had the baby 26 minutes after I got to the hospital. Okay.
Wow.
26 minutes. So I'm on all fours and I was like, I'm going to throw up because, and don't throw up in pregnancy, but I throw up before I give birth. So I threw up, I was on all fours and my water broke. So I was like a double spouted, like like a double spouted hose. And my husband said, everybody was like, oh, and then they cleaned it up, right? And then I pushed and he came out. No tearing. Because I did it on all fours. And there he was. I put him right on my breast. We nursed. My doula went somewhere and found me a tuna sandwich. I ate it, And my OB, I think she might have like gotten there like at the butt and like barely caught the baby, like was just like there. And what she said to me was like, wow, you got everything you asked for on your birth plan. She was like, wow, you did exactly what you said you would do. Yeah, I don't want your epidural, I don't want your sleepy baby. I don't want a fever to spike. I don't want to feel that epidural needle for the rest of my life. I remember when I was a teenager, I had met a very young mom who was like years after giving birth. She said she still felt it. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to do that. So had the baby. It was great. I felt like doing high kicks after I had the baby, right? Like there was like all the zombies and everybody was screaming. There was no screaming for me, I was just like, like my contractions were like, or not even, I wouldn't even make a sound. I was just like, you can ask my husband. I need him to do the orgasmic birth podcasting so he can remember, like his
definitely, we'd love to have him at some point to share his perspective because it was different for him.
So there you had the first one. The second one was a little different, and I think it was just to humble me, because if I had another baby in 26, delivered in 26 minutes after being in the hospital, I'd be like, what is everyone talking about this birth thing being hard? Like, what are you talking about? They just come out, and as a doula, I know that they don't just come out, right? It's mind over matter. And I have, for this specific thing, not for anything else, but for this specific thing, I have this ability to transmute or to experience it as pressure, as a joyful anticipation, something like my gift is coming to me. I wouldn't necessarily say it was like pleasure, but it wasn't unpleasant. It was great. Like it was challenging and just ecstatic, like I was elated. And then we had our baby and we named him, and then our mothers came and saw the baby, and our relatives came. It was before COVID. So then I had a baby. They let me have a baby. Like, how did they do that? So it was a great experience. It was a really great experience. And I left I left that hospital doing high kicks. I could do squats. I could do a back. I could do gymnastics. I felt great. They'd ask me about pain, like, how's your pain? I was like, no pain. Like, there's no pain. I did not want your acetaminophen or whatever. And I had been saying to you yesterday, my husband is my analgesic. His touch was like what comforted me. He was just there, like all throughout the day. Besides farting, he was like, attending to my needs, rubbing me and loving, like just being there. Like the fact that he's just, without being asked, just so available and just stabilizing and just, just making my space safe and protecting the space was so great. And then having our doula there, she's just, really also holding the space. I feel like the doula holds the space and really like takes care of the birthing person so that any other support can take care of this space, protect the space. There's a lot of things going on, there are a lot of competing interests, like, and it's just like, but I was very good to advocate, like I was able to advocate for myself. And I say that because I'm sure it was because I was 40. So it was like an older crabby lady. Like I wasn't like, if I were like maybe 30 or maybe 20 something, like there's this inclination, I think, especially how we're socialized as women, to just want to be pleasing and to acquiesce. And the thing that I learned, especially as a Black woman, in the medical world, is that compliant Black women get killed, right? The ones that are agreeing and acquiescing and not questioning, they get murdered. And I learned that also, not murdered, but they get, bad things happen to them. I learned that also with cancer patients, right? Like the really just feisty, fighting ones, they have greater survival rates. So the thing that I knew was I had to advocate for myself. And I had been, I was able to develop that from early, like early adulthood until, being 40. So I was like, like when they were trying to do an IV, it was like Heplock. You remember that, right? I don't want your IV. Flush it, the saline solution, and let's go. And so they did. And I was able to remember my birth plan because I had painstakingly put it together, not painstakingly, lovingly put it together. Let me be responsible about the language. Lovingly put it together, enthusiastically researched it, enjoyed all the things that I discovered, learned about my favorite websites, like evidence-based birth is like my Bible for birth. And my Bible for breastfeeding is, like kellymom.com. Like just evidence, right? Like I'm not taking any anecdotal information. I want to know, well, does this pan out? So I remembered all the parts of my visual birth plan, and it worked out. It did.
No, you're amazing, right? And I do agree, like you really made sure your voice was heard. And that's such an important piece of birth, right? Really being honored in the process. Now, the second time around, did you prepare any different, or did you feel you had already kind of done it, so it was just go along?
No, I did prepare. The second time around was different. I was older. I weighed more. They like I was like the first one, no issues or whatever. I always quote unquote failed my gestational diabetes at the sugar screening, and then they would do it again and everything would be fine. So this one, second baby, I failed it again, except the OB decided that it was just so high there was no point in doing the 3-hour test and inundating the baby with all that sugar. And me being the person that I am, like, I don't have gestational diabetes. I may have a spike because of XYZ food. And so then, like when they referred me to an endocrinologist, and they had me track, like prick my finger and all that other stuff. So, I created a color-coded spreadsheet, right? Right?
I love you, Theresa. You're so amazing with this.
So I created this, like tracking what I ate, what in spiked, like cereal and spaghetti. Nope. Like when it spiked, and then would like put like a yellow if it was like above, like it was above range, green if it was well within range, and then like red if it was out of range. And so out of all my readings that I was tracking, like I got out of range like twice when I like had stopped doing. So I was in the I was like, so I had this whole argument that I was going to present to the endocrinologist and to the nutritionist who I was meeting with. I had this whole like spreadsheet, and I was like, I don't have gestational diabetes. I'm not owning it. I'm just not, right? Unfortunately, while I was meeting with the nutritionist, I get this phone call from my brothers that my mom had passed away.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
So yeah, it's just like, so I was pregnant with my daughter. And everything just didn't matter. Like my spreadsheet, whether I had it or I didn't have it, I didn't care, right? Like I just didn't care. The one anchoring thing that had me like after losing my mom was the children, but there was a moment there I was like, what's the point? Like I don't have my mom. but you know, just continue to be responsible about my eating and walking and stuff. Um, you know, and this baby was different because my mother did the first bath for my son, and she came all the way from Nigeria, so it was something for me. So it was like a different um, approach, but I still did I updated my visual birth plan. Now I had more information, so I was like, oh, I'm going to do this instead of that, and I realized that I couldn't donate the placenta, the cord, because New York State doesn't have anything that you can do that. But I would have donated it or whatever. I didn't necessarily want to store it, but what was different? Because I'm so
Yeah. Take me
different.
through how labor began and when you
Okay.
moved to your birthplace. What was different there?
Let me see
And
this.
was your husband farting?
No, not this time. You know, he wasn't as flatulent this one, because this one was different. Because this was like, this is my renegade birth plan. So this birth plan, I was like, no IV. I was like, you know what? You don't even need a hip lock. Just no IV. You know, I graduated to like, eh. So this was a very interesting experience. So I was due like, I was due like whatever, like 40 weeks in. I was due like sometime in April. And, you know, I'm walking around, you know, looking very spry and cute and just, you know, doing backflips. So, you know, this baby's not ready to come, right? Like there's nothing, there's no quickening, there's no like hunkering down or whatever. So I began to have this conversation with my OB about an induction, right? And you know me, Deborah, you know me,
Yes.
induction? Why are you cursing at me? Like, what are you saying? I'm like, no, 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 thank you. And you know, my husband, who's just kind of like neutral, trying to maneuver my maybe my stubbornness versus you know, just being realistic or logical or making these optimal choices. So you know, at some point, I agree. We can do an induction if the baby doesn't come out by X amount of date. But I was like, I wanted it like um my son was born on the 10th. um my my daughter was born, they're both born in the same month, and they were trying to do the induction on the 8th, and I just could not tolerate missing his birthday. And I was like, I want the induction on the 13th, right? Like, and my doctor was like, she couldn't, she whatever it was. And I didn't say anything to her. I just looked at her like, I'm not showing up. I'm not coming. I'm not coming for your induction. You know, like, doesn't matter to me. But what was very interesting was I emailed her, like I have the email still, and I told her that I would go into labor like April 30th on Sunday. I said I'm gonna go into labor on Sunday. I don't know why I knew, but I said that's when I'm gonna go into labor. And lo and behold, on Sunday, I go into labor, right? But it's like prodromal labor, I think, because I was in labor from April 30th until May 2nd, right? So that's
Wow.
like, oh, but again, not painful. Like I'm frantically cleaning the house because I'm like, I'm gonna have 2 children. I'm gonna have a newborn. This is that never gonna have time. So I'm cleaning. And then by like Thursday morning, something was like, it's time. Like something felt really heavy. I don't even remember the at home much other than I was just cleaning and folding and cleaning and folding. That was just like my whole at home. Um, I ended up going to the hospital sooner than I normally would just because it felt like it was time. But there were other things happening there. So get loaded in the car, feeling like this urge to push or something like a discomfort, but not pain again, just pressure, you know, like it's time, it's go time, you're opening up, something's happening, right? Looser stools, all the other stuff, like all this stuff is happening. So get in the car and we're headed to the hospital. This time, not reckless. We're able to take the highway, and we go over a bump in the highway. And I was like, the way that it felt, like it was just so uncomfortable. And I was ready for her to come out. I was like, I don't care how they get this baby out. If they have to cut her out, just get. Well, I didn't even know if it was a girl because I never know the sex of the child, the gender of the child. I find out when they're born. So like, get this baby, just get them out, right? So that, you know, I guess that was like my transition. It was like, get them out, right? So we get to the
Right.
hospital. I get in there and I'm just like feeling this pressure, like in the, usually back in your rectum, just feeling it, feeling it. So they check me. I'm super calm or whatever. They check me and I'm 8 centimeters, right? So I'm 8 centimeters. So, I'm not 8 centimeters. I'm never screaming any centimeter, right? So we get there and we're in the room. And now this time I'm at the hospital for real, like really hooked on monitors, um, being attended to by my OB. She has time. She's like finally got me in her clutches, right? The way that she wants me in her sights. So these 8 centimeters stayed 8 centimeters for almost like for 6 hours. I was in labor for 6 hours.
Wow.
And like I was told by my doula and I think we picked up the doula on the way as well. I was told by my doula and my OB never complain about 6 hours of labor. But they really, it wasn't just 6 hours, but never complain about
Right.
6 hours in the hospital. I was like, this baby needs to come out. Like I was so annoyed, right? Like I was like, because I'm spoiled. I had the 26 minutes. I'm like, why is the baby not coming out? Years later, when I do my doula training, and especially with like orgasmic birth stuff where, you want to feel safe, unobserved, those things, right? Like I was in a hospital. So there's all the monitoring, all that stuff. Also, somewhere in there, going from 1 to 2 subconsciously like frightened me out of, like, it was just too much, like frightening, like, are we going to be able to handle it? I'm cleaning the house, I'm preparing, I'm so behind, like all that other stuff. And I wasn't necessarily ready to go to have a second child, like not right then. And so I feel like that was what stalled it. So in my birth plan, I have the visual tiles. I wish I had it with me. Maybe I'll pull up one of those. But I have the visual tiles, but underneath it all, there's writing where, I'm like, I would like someone who would like to support a physiological birth, unmedicated birth. I would like, like a nursing team that wants to do that. No Pitocin unless it's absolutely necessary. Like just a little request that just like were like my highlights. And I happened to get one nurse who had never really observed a physiological birth, so was really excited for it, and one who really loved physiological births. So, and who she was like really great, and she was really into it. And so when I wasn't dilating any further, she recommended nipple stimulation for my husband. So everyone leaves the room, vacates, doula, everybody leaves, and my husband does his nipple stimulation. And when you're in labor, nipple stimulation may not be the thing that like don't. I'm a don't touch me after a while, right? It wasn't particularly fun, but my husband was just like, I'm getting my baby, right? He's always here to earn his baby, right? He's getting his baby. He does what he has to do, and he fully dilates me, right? Within minutes or whatever it was, he did his work. OB comes back and she checks and does this maneuver. Again, I hate being touched. Like I'm like all autonomous, but she does this maneuver and I think she helps the baby's head descend. And something was like, again, second baby, I'm not as fit. I'm more tired because I've been going through this for 3 days straight, right? So I am tired. Like I had to be good to myself, but I'm tired. She does it, and then I was gonna do it on all fours, but I didn't even get there. I was on my side, and on my side, then you have people holding your leg. And again, I like to do stuff on my own, but this birth, what had me be dependent on my husband, my doula, the nursing team, like they held my leg up, push. She comes out, and I'm like, for some reason, the first thing I think about when I see her is like the Kraken. Like, what have we done? It's gone from 1 to 2. What have we done? Like, I mean, she was beautiful and everything, but I was just like, oh, it's 2. And I know that's the thing that was in me. Like, can I do this? Can I mother with the intensity and attention and focus? Because the way that I research birth is the way that I research parenting, right? And then it's the way that I apply to parenting. That's what happens, I think, when you're an older parent. You're just, you have time to, I've gone clubbing enough. So, this is my clubbing. I read these things. So she comes out, she's beautiful. There was a moment between my doula, my husband, and the OB, because I didn't want that maneuver. And my doula looks at me without wordlessly, just let me know that it's okay. And, you know, like the look from my doula was like, it's okay, or she'll cut you. like, you know, like I always say when I first met my OB for the first birth, and I am this 39-year-old, you know, older, and a lot of the risk factors for all the bad things are just simply that you're Black. Like, that's it. Like, not like you're this, it's just like Black woman, right? Like, now you're at risk for preeclampsia, which doesn't take into account the real reasons, like the real risk factor, right?
Right.
Whatever that is. So I remember when I first met her, I was like, she's like sharpening her knife, like, I'm gonna cut you. Like, you know, like, this is such a cute little visual birth plan. I'm gonna cut you. And she had done one of my good friends, like my best friend from second grade, she was her OB, and she had a C-section, right? She'd had a C-section, but it was planned. And it was like for her, you know, necessary. So I was like, the OB had me in her clutches, but she, again, having done all those births, having had her own experience, she was very respectful, was very, you know, like almost like a peer-to-peer level. Like, she wasn't talking down to me. She didn't infantilize me. She was just like, she was very respectful, and also presented what she believed, and got that baby's head, like just that little twist, the baby's head descended. She came out, and there I was with my baby. Again, no tears with this baby. And yeah, so this second experience is like why I want like 5 more, because then I'm like, okay, be more physically fit. Okay, make sure that you can flip onto your hands and knees. Maybe try to sleep instead of cleaning the house if you're in 3-day prodromal labor. Like, do this, do that. That's why, like, something inside of me just wants to adjust it. So the way that I can live that out is by being a doula and helping to strategize with other people, helping them to educate them, and helping them create their own optimal births, whatever that looks like for them. So, and that's me, you know. Second baby was beautiful. It was great. And yeah, you know, like I would do it again and again. I would do it again and again. My husband's done, though, you know.
Your stories are like so powerful and full of so many lessons. So I know that everybody that's listening, I'm sure, is taking all different nuggets. And I have to say, I heard, and you kind of said that with the second birth, and we talked about it in the doula workshop, right? That impact of emotions. And as you said, needing to feel safe and private and unobserved. So like so much more was going on for you. But I have to bring you to like your comment at the beginning that, yeah, what do you think would revolutionize birth in the US? Because you have your own experiences and you did a lot of work for the births that you had to stay in your power. So what do you think would revolutionize birth in the US?
You know,
And really anywhere.
Anyway, I ask this question of you and everyone else that we run into in these doula circles, because, you know, there's all these conversations about Black maternal health and these outcomes without really acknowledging that the maternal outcomes in the United States are terrible for all women, like white women, you know, white birthing people. And so they're not on par with other countries. They're not on par with other so-called first world nations, or even, you know, like even so-called third world, you know, third world countries without the same resources. Like, if you have an uncomplicated birth in a so-called third world country, you have more of a chance to have like a great outcome than here. Now, if you have a complicated birth, this is the place to be, right? Like, this is the place where the interventions really are like, do what they need to do, and they do it quickly. But like, if there's no need for intervention, there's this need to intervene that causes birth to be troublesome. Oh, the you know, I'll answer. I want to go back to my birth, because there were 2 things that happened in the whole 6 hours that I was there. I felt like I was there too long, but I had the urge to push. So that's just what it was. And second baby betrayed me, because they're supposed to come out faster the second time, and she was like, nope. So 2 things. One was I had said no IV, and my OB pointedly tells me, like, if you don't have an IV, then you know that if you have to go into the OR, then we're going to have to put you under general anesthesia. We're going to have to put you under. And I was like, that's fine. Like, if you have to cut me, I don't want to be awake for that. There's nothing romantic about watching you cut the baby from my guts, right? Like, just give me an alive baby. Let me put me to sleep, because that'll, like, let me be calm about that, and make sure that I wake up with a baby, right? Like, don't have me wake up without my baby. Like, my baby needs to make it. So that was that one thing. So, I was a bit of a renegade there. And the second thing is the anesthesiologist was not allowed in my room. Like, they were not, like, like, they knew not to come in. But what anesthesiologist asked for permission to come in? And so this is while I'm in the labor process. So he comes in, right? He was, I think he was like, I want to say he was like Russian or something. He's like, what is your plan? What is your plan? Like, very forcefully. Like, I feel like, like he was like Nadia Comaneci's coach. Like, what are you doing here? Like, what is your plan? What is your plan? And I was like, the plan is for me to labor and deliver this baby. Also in the plan is that if I am in need of your services, you are going to calculate how much anesthesia I need based on my weight and whatever information that you have, because like that, that is your expertise. And and again, I'm going through this process of contractions, and I'm having this conversation with him, and I'm letting him know that that's the plan. And he was like appalled by it, but like, you're not going to come and put an epidural in me. I'm not interested in it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I've broken my hand and reset it myself once, right? Like, like, that's how I found out I was pregnant, because I had to go get an x-ray and I had to pee in a cup, but that's another story. So, yes. Like, I will do anything in my power not to have anything unnecessary in my body. I believe in medicine. I believe in vaccines. I believe in all the things, whatever it is, I believe in it. But I do not believe in extra, like, unnecessary intervention. So I tell him that. It was a little upsetting that he was in there, but I also handled him, and I handled him, not the doula, not my husband. And I'm just like, this is what I do. This is, like, I was like mentioned to him that I remember when I had my appendectomy when I was a teenager, I wake up on the table. And my brother too, when he had an appendectomy, he wakes up. So just know that, right? Like, so I have to go under, right. I'm going to wake up. So just know that. And so he went on his merry way, and I continued my process, and I had the baby the way that I wanted it.
You're fantastic.
But,
I mean, such a good advocate for yourself in every way, right? You really did. So I know we're coming like to the end of the time, and yes. I know that people are probably like, oh my goodness, Theresa, like, you're a doula and a lactation consultant, right? And people in the New York area might want to find you, and people all over the world may want to hear some of your wisdom. How can people reach out and get in touch with you?
Okay, so people can find me, my company, my birthing practice is Nnenna Birth, NNENNABIRTH. So that's nnennabirth.com. You can find me at Nnenna Birth on Instagram, at Nnenna Birth on Facebook. If you need to, if you're interested, you can give me a call at 646-801-4322. I am available. You can also email me at nnennabirth@gmail.com. And I didn't quite answer your question about revolutionizing birth in the United States. I think people should really let births happen on their own. I'm not adverse to hospital births, but all the extra stuff that they do in preparation for an emergency actually precipitates emergencies, creates emergencies, and they should do less. They should do the minimal thing at that moment that will make a difference, as opposed to doing like too much, like all the IV, all the, you can't handle the pain, you can't do this, all this stuff. So that's one. I think that the hospital approach should really look at becoming less interventionist. And the second thing I think is that people who are preparing to give birth really need to do their research. And of course, and if you're not interested, you're not able to, or you don't feel like you can do your research, take childbirth education classes, get a doula, trust your doula. So vet your doula, right? Like, get me as a doula. I know my stuff. And when I don't, I research and I ask other doulas and I ask other medical professionals. Like I have friends who are OBs, so I reach out to them, and I help my clients weigh life or death. Is this, is this a good approach? So that's what I would say. Do less in hospitals, spend more time waiting and seeing and being prepared and on alert than doing stuff ahead of time, throwing everything at everything. And for people who are going through the process, create your team, make sure that your support in that room is on the same page, and go in there well-versed and trust yourself. Not everybody can be 40 and old and crabby, as I said, and just I'm gonna do what I want to do because it's my body. Not all of us are like that, but you can be empowered to be like that when you have a team that supports you in that, and you have the information that you need, because it can be scary in those medical rooms.
Yeah. Beautifully said. I couldn't agree with you more. I have to thank you so much for sharing your birth stories and your wisdom. It's been truly an honor to listen and to share with everyone else, but also such an honor to be together as doulas in the New York, New Jersey area and to stay connected. So I hope people that are listening heed your advice, get to good childbirth education. We do have pleasurable birth essentials for anyone that would like them. They're an online class. You can go at your own pace. And I hope some of you are inspired to become doulas to join us. We definitely need more doulas. And like you, we need more Black, Brown, and Indigenous doulas in the United States. We really need to be changing maternity care for everyone to feel nurtured, supported, respected, and having positive births. So thank you so much, Theresa, and thank you for everyone that's joined us today. Thank you.
Yeah.